In the last 2 centuries, dozens of planes, hundreds of ships, and thousands of people have vanished in a very specific patch of the North Atlantic. Drawn from Miami to San Juan to Bermuda, this expanse of water has earned a grim reputation as an aquatic graveyard. The stories stretch all the way back to 1492. As Christopher Columbus sailed through these exact coordinates trying to reach Asia, he recorded something strange in his journal. His compass needles began turning erratically off true north, and he recorded seeing a bizarre, wax-like light bobbing in the distance. Jump forward to March 1918. One of the U.S. Navy's largest ships, the USS Cyclops, was carrying a massive cargo load and 300 men on a route directly through this area. The ship never arrived in Baltimore. What makes the disappearance of the Cyclops so chilling is the absolute silence. Despite having the capability and the equipment, the crew never transmitted a single SOS distress call. And when the Navy searched the area, they couldn't find a wooden bucket, a life preserver, or a single piece of wreckage. By 1945, the disappearances moved into the sky. A group of World War II bombers flying a routine 3-hour exercise out of Florida pushed into this airspace and simply ceased to exist, never returning to their base. When you stack up over 70 isolated, factually accurate disappearances across hundreds of years, you create a terrifying informational vacuum. People looked at this stretch of ocean, saw the missing ships and planes, and desperately needed an answer for what was eating them. By the 1970s, pop culture happily filled that void. Authors began selling millions of books claiming this patch of water was a gateway to something supernatural, blaming the missing crews on leftover crystal energy from ancient Atlantis, alien abductions, and rips in spacetime. We are going to completely ignore all of that. We cannot take a handful of spooky stories and jump straight to aliens coming to save humans from nuclear warfare. Rational, modern thinkers require a much higher standard of evidence. Instead, we are going to look strictly at the serious, evidence-based models developed by actual researchers. We need to explore the specific mechanical hypotheses that scientists have built to explain exactly why this patch of ocean is so lethal. The first major scientific explanation relies on a phenomenon called geomagnetism. The Earth's magnetic field is not uniform, and researchers have hypothesized that this specific region holds intense magnetic anomalies that can physically alter a ship's navigational tools. This provides a direct physical explanation for why Christopher Columbus sat on his wooden deck in 1492, staring at a compass that suddenly refused to point north. If broken compasses explain how ships get lost, a second hypothesis explains how they actually sink: methane blowouts. Trapped deep beneath the ocean floor are massive, highly pressurized deposits of methane gas. If a seismic event disrupts one of these deposits, it triggers a catastrophic reaction. The gas bursts through the water column, rapidly decreasing the water's density. If a ship happens to be floating right above it, the ocean effectively loses its buoyancy, and the vessel is instantly sucked down into the resulting crater.
Between invisible magnetic fields blinding captains and massive gas bubbles swallowing 500-foot freighters whole, we suddenly have a highly satisfying, strictly rational explanation for ships vanishing without a trace. The threats in this region extend far beyond the ocean floor. The airspace above the Caribbean is subject to some of the most violent meteorological conditions on the planet, heavily prone to an abnormal concentration of high-intensity hurricanes. When these extreme converging storm systems collide, they can generate what oceanographers call rogue waves. A rogue wave is a freak wall of water that can reach 100 feet or more in height. The sheer physical force of that much moving water is enough to snap a metal hull in half or completely swat a low-flying military plane out of the sky in seconds. Look at how neatly this all fits together. You take extreme Caribbean weather systems, layer them over deep-sea methane deposits, and add a dash of geomagnetism. You get a perfectly logical, interlocking scientific explanation for a centuries-old mystery. There is only one problem. Using scientific-sounding words like geomagnetism and methane blowouts to explain a mystery is a trap. It is just another form of fictional storytelling if you haven't actually checked the macro data to see if the premise is true.
To find the truth, we have to stop looking at isolated anecdotes and start looking at the aggregate math. We need to zoom out and look at the tens of thousands of marine casualties recorded over decades by groups like the shipping publication Lloyd's List. This chart shows the global baseline for all marine traffic. Out of all the vessels sailing on every ocean on Earth, roughly 1.8% experience some form of casualty or accident. Now look at what happens when we isolate the data for the Bermuda Triangle. In 2021, out of the 8,634 boats that passed through this specific area, only 2 had any sort of casualty. That is a read of 0.02%. The mathematical reality is staggering. Boats traveling through the Bermuda Triangle are actually 90 times safer than the global average. Those brilliant, highly logical scientific hypotheses about rogue waves and methane blowouts were entirely pointless. They were built to solve a phenomenon that simply does not exist in reality. This exposes a massive blind spot in human psychology. Our brains are hardwired to crave a good, mysterious story. We treat narratives like intellectual ice cream. We would much rather consume a thrilling tale about cursed waters than look at a boring spreadsheet showing normal shipping statistics. When a storyteller combines factual data points, like a missing Navy ship or a real geological phenomenon, with dramatic visuals and music, it is incredibly easy to manipulate your perception of reality. It makes the false premise feel completely true. This is why true intellectual rigor is so difficult. It requires us to look past the compelling narratives, reject the satisfying scientific hypotheses that solve fake problems, and force ourselves to anchor our worldview entirely in undeniable, macro-level data.